I do want this to be pretty informal today. Obviously, if there are questions that come up, the things that we'll have time at the end to talk through some of that stuff, but I'd love to, again, answer anything that kind of pops into your minds as we're going through this stuff. But just talking, first of all, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Always love talking to students, knowing that I started really my career as a student with Northwestern Mutual. And so definitely bleed blue from the beginning, but I was 19 when I got my start with Northwestern Mutual. So I know how impactful potentially, maybe not me, but somebody can be to you early on as you're thinking about your career and thinking about kind of where you want to go and what you want to do and accomplish. And so again, today, I want to talk a little bit about, the career and kind of what we do at Northwestern Mutual, but how that translates a bit to leadership and really what that means from, I think everybody has a chance to lead themselves, but the second that you become, anything that's client facing or customer facing, you have to lead others, right? And that means that, you have to be, leadership doesn't always mean being authoritarian and telling people what to do. It's a lot of times asking good questions and being responsive to feedback. And that's, again, goes for working with clients, but it also goes for working with, team members and staff and people that you manage and lead, et cetera. And so I think there's a lot of skills that do translate between, again, working with clients, but also working with teams that you might work with and lead into the future. And so, first thing, that's me, obviously, I'm right here. So what we, I don't know.
Do you want to
Click your computer. So really what we're talking about today is kind of what our vision is just in general. And a lot of that ties back to how we run our office and the things that, the lens that we look through when it comes to the way that we treat others, the way that we, treat others in the community, the way that we interact with those people, kind of what we view as, again, our values, if you will, within that vision. And then what it means to be part of a company that's going to be there for the long term. And I think there's, you hear a lot about quiet quitting, you hear a lot about, lack of loyalty, not only from companies, but also from individuals and their firms. And so I think the long-term value comes back to, there's a large percentage of people that retire with Northwestern Mutual. Again, me being with the firm for 14 years is pretty rare to have a young adult, graduating school, be at the same company or same firm for as long as a lot of the people that we work around stay with our firm. And so, what does that mean and why is that? Part of it comes back to the opportunity as the advisor, but also the company that you're associated with. People tend to really align with those values. And then finally, talk about leadership potential. Like I said, it's a journey. I was talking earlier and made a lot of mistakes, right? I think that's part of leadership, is being okay making mistakes. I mean, a lot of times and being okay accepting responsibility, right? If your team makes mistakes, if your team does things like that, does fall on you. And I think the worst thing a leader can do is place blame on others. Generally, it should be, hey, you need to take responsibility and also learn how to coach and manage through that at the end of the day. So we'll talk about that leadership potential and what that really means, maybe specifically to what our firm looks for. So when it comes to our vision and values, and so this has evolved a little bit over the last few years, but I think in the past, financial planning was something you kind of did truly as just a job, right? It was, in financial planning, we'll talk a little bit more about what our version of financial planning is, but working with clients, at the end of the day, once you retired, most of your clients were also retiring, right? And there wasn't a great kind of succession plan for the next generation and also getting them through retirement rather than just to retirement. And so our vision is really to become the preeminent firm in this industry to build, grow, and maximize an enduring firm at all levels. And an enduring firm really means that you're creating an actual business, right? This is not a sales job where, again, you have nothing of value or equity at the end of the day. And hey, you could make some money along the way and probably help some people, but there's nothing that you really built up in terms of equity and really long-term multi-generational impact. That's really what our firm is looking to do at this point, is create and help others create a firm that is bigger than themselves at this point. So, and that takes, again, a lot of leadership, because you now have to understand the impact of not just one transaction, but more so how to build a team, how to build something, a brand that lasts, again, beyond when you retire. And so, for example, one of our advisors just kind of rebranded, still obviously they're co-branded and work with Northwestern Mutual, but they've rebranded as Cornerstone Financial, right? And it was just Gardner Brown. And it was just one guy going out and being a great advisor, but he's now done this for a long time. He's created a really good team that now when he retires, that impact that he has had or his business has had will continue on past that point when he decides like, hey, I'm not really wanting to work anymore, but he still wants to support clients. He still wants to make sure that everything that they want is still accounted for, right? And that means that getting them through retirement, also, like I said, that next generation beyond them. And so the thing that we really try to live by is this 4-4 on a daily basis, really. And it's always fun to hear that come back up once in a while in conversation, and it makes you know that people are thinking about these things as they're again going about their daily lives. And so respect to everyone is kind of our main part of that core 4. And that really what that means is that you shouldn't treat anybody different, from our managing partner, managing director, or our growth team to the people that clean the office, right? I think when I have an interview with anybody that comes into the firm, one of the leading indicators of if I want to hire that person or even want to keep exploring that is if they talk to the person at the front desk and remember that person's name and say bye to them when they leave the office. I think those are little things that, you could be a great financial advisor, but a complete jerk outside of that doesn't mean I want you part of my firm generally, right? I think you need to be a little bit more well-rounded and be more to your communities, your churches, all that, et cetera, outside of just being a great advisor, right? Be present. I think I always give the example again. I've been here 14 years. I joke about how, we'll say experienced I am in this world at this point, but I've been to a lot of our conferences. I've been to a lot of trainings. I've been to a lot of, events where you're supposed to be learning something. And I think the being present, that means being on time, right? That's probably the first thing. And that's something we probably coach our interns on a little bit more than some of our established people, but that matters, right? And the reason that matters is because if you show up late to something that we're putting on in terms of training, like, are you going to show up late to a client meeting, right? It's how you do one thing generally means how you're going to do everything. And so I think those little things do matter. And being present also means taking something out of everything that you do, right? Doesn't mean you have to, again, hopefully you get something out of what I talk about today. It doesn't mean that every single minute of this is probably going to be riveting in terms of what I'm talking about, but at the very least, say we get something out of this. And that's kind of the way we coach our new advisors and teams, and that every time you go into something, be present, be active, be engaged, and try to get at least something out of that conversation that you had, right? Practice like a pro. So where we got some of these from, we kind of stole it, which is, probably the most of what you see in business is some sort of repurposed piece. But Terry Francona was the coach of the Boston Red Sox when they won the World Series after that really long drought. However, you have to build a culture within a professional sports team, right? You think they're all consummate professionals and they're all ready and willing to work and practice, and you forget that they're all just 18-year-old millionaires that maybe have a little bit of an ego, right? And so, you have to create some structure in terms of, how you run your organization. And this is, we took from him and adapted to our world. And practice like a pro just means that if you're not kind of green and growing, you're probably dead and dying, right? And so I think at the end of the day, education is a huge part of our firm, right? Always continuing to learn, getting your CFP, getting more designations, getting, all the certifications you can possibly get. We always talk about being as dumb as your smartest client, right? You should always be a step or two ahead of the clients that you're working with. And the more and more sophisticated client you work with, obviously the more and more sophisticated you need to become. And so that's a really, really important piece of our firm, is to continue to educate, continue to get better at your craft, because again, things, especially in the securities world and in the investment world, et cetera, are always changing and evolving. You got to stay ahead of that curve. And the final thing is play to win, right? And I think the inverse of play to win, the way that I look at it, I don't think anybody plays to lose by any means, but I think a lot of people play not to lose. And so what I mean by that is more so going through the motions, right? Doing the bare minimum, making sure like, hey, I'm just going to not get fired. This kind of like probably relates back to that quietly quitting and saying like, hey, I'm going to still do my job, but at a level that, yeah, they're not going to fire me, but I'm probably not advancing a whole lot. And so one of these, play to win, the other way to look at it is, we always try to look when we're hiring somebody who's programmed to over deliver. right? It's somebody that just, it's hard to teach, but it's something that like, hey, it kind of has to be ingrained in you and something you have to be thoughtful about. Again, we're in a client-facing business that matters to clients, but also it matters to our advisors and how we're, treating them and building them up, et cetera. And so all those things together is something that we actually use in all of our quarterly reviews with whether it's staff or our advising teams. And we go through that and say, hey, are we living by these different values? And there's obviously subcategories. We kind of dig into it and they really provide a review to us in terms of, hey, are we executing on this? And then what's next quarter are we going to look at in terms of the things that we want to go execute on and grow through, right? Any questions on any of that stuff as I've been talking through that? It seems pretty straightforward, but okay. So let's talk a little bit about, being with a firm or with even just an industry in general that is going to be there for the long term, right? I think that the fortunate piece of getting into the industry that I've been in for now 14 years is that people need what we do, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. People need what we do. Most people aren't going to go do it on their own, at least at a really effective level. There's a lot of research out there in terms of working with an advisor and how that helps, clients execute on the goals that they have and the dreams that they have. In addition, partnering with another firm that's going to be there for the long haul does matter as well. We see a lot in the industry now of private equity firms buying out books of business. And generally, when a private equity firm buys you out, it doesn't mean the experience tends to get better for clients and better for the people that are working for that firm, et cetera. And so, our goal is to be there into perpetuity, right? And that helps us execute on those enduring firms that Gardner, who I talked about before, can't promise to his clients that he's going to have a firm that's enduring forever if the firm that he's associated with isn't going to be there. And so, no question has the highest financial strength ratings out there. They're in the industry. I think the only other financial strength rating that was close to ours was Microsoft in the world right now. So again, something that I probably take for granted, seeing this year after year after year. But we had another managing director at our firm that worked at Wachovia. I don't know if anybody's heard that name, probably not, maybe because they don't exist anymore. And that was part of the issue. He worked with Wachovia for a number of years, and through the 08-09 crisis, their firm folded, right? And so we would go to meetings and they had 3 or 4 CEOs in about 3 years. They're laying people off left and right. And so something that I might take for granted that like every year we show up and hey, financial results are strong, things are really great. He was like, that is the most exciting part of any meeting for me is hearing how well we're doing, because that matters, right? That means that I'm not going to have to look for something different. I'm not going to have to change course, and I can deliver on all these promises to clients because I know this company is going to be there long term, right? So what does financial planning mean to us, and what does our firm do in terms of working with clients? And again, this doesn't mean every client's going to get every one of these things, because it might not be relevant to every single client. So a lot of what we do is very, very customized to each of these clients. However, we are, a full service, full suite financial planning, financial advising firm. And so that matters in the investment space, right? Helping people invest their money and save for different goals. A bit more private client services, all that really refers to is, hey, there are some very sophisticated, maybe it's stock buyouts or, business sales and liquidity events that, our team has sophistication enough to be able to help clients with. Alternative investments. We can invest in private equity, even though I did maybe give them a little bit of a bad rap earlier. It's still a pretty good investment a lot of times for our high net worth clients. Trust and estate planning, like you said, that's the legacy building. Like, how do we impact the next generation of people that we want to work with? Business planning. So we do a lot of work with small business owners around their group benefits and how do I implement a 401k and how do I, make sure my key employees stay around for a long time and they're happy as long as they can be. Education planning for kids. Obviously, a lot of risk management and insurance planning and wealth protection. And then finally, obviously, probably on most people's minds is retirement planning. Maybe not you quite yet, but as you start getting out into the marketplace, a lot of people are thinking about, can I retire? Is it the same lifestyle that I want? What are the things that could get in the way of me being successful, right? Any questions on any of those things that we do as a firm at all that we want to dig into? Okay. So what that kind of comes down to is, not a lot of firms can do all of those things. If you look at the industry, you're kind of siloed into one space or another. You're either kind of just an insurance company or you're just an investment firm. And so our firm said, hey, that's not true financial planning. If you can't help them with the risk management, if you can't help them with their estate, distribution. You can't help them with their retirement planning, investment planning. You're not really doing financial planning. You're just doing insurance planning or investment planning. And so that was something we just believed for a long time. And when I started the business, that was what I had a kind of faith was true with some of the veteran advisors that have been there for a much longer time. Now, that might be a little bit hard to see on the slide, but Ernst & Young, who's heard of Ernst & Young? Financial firm, right? Accounting firm. So one of the big four accounting firms. They did some independent research on retirement planning specifically. And they said, obviously, there's a lot of ways that you can plan for retirement, a lot of different products you can use, et cetera. But they wanted to look at what's a really effective way of being able to plan for retirement. And so this is, they ran a few different ages. They ran 25-year-olds, 35, 45, and 55-year-olds. And they said, hey, based on the type of planning that you could be doing, different products that you could use, what creates the best outcomes, right? And all of this stuff worked even better the earlier you started it. So all these percentages you'll see up there just got even bigger the earlier you started some of this planning, right? So the different things that they measured, first thing was accumulation, or how much money was in a portfolio at retirement, right? How much money did you have saved up at that point? Second was, most people really care about how much money can you spend during retirement. So that was the second metric that they measured. And then the third one was legacy, right? How much was left over to the next generation, churches, charities, et cetera, right? Your heirs. So they looked at different, again, products. They said, hey, we have to save at least 20%. This is a 45-year-old couple. They ran a bunch of different trials. They varied rates of return and inflation, all sorts of different fun stuff to kind of really stress test this. So for a 45-year-old saving 20% of their income, they showed a 3% bump in how much money you had at retirement. If you move from just an all investment strategy or to a more integrated approach of investments, insurance, annuities, things like that, 16% higher, $15,000 a year more of income that you could spend with an integrated approach, and about $1 million or more on average of legacy that's passed on. So it doesn't mean that person that only does investments won't be successful. It's just that our company can provide an even more integrated and more efficient approach to retirement planning. So the stuff that we just talked about, it does actually provide additional value. And I love talking to clients about that, our new advisors, about, hey, there's a lot of confidence in what you do because it's providing a lot of value to clients on a regular basis. So when we think about building this business, right? We talk about an enduring firm. We talk about like, hey, we're actually building something that should be sustainable for a long, long time. There's a lot of components that go into that. Right. And there's some people that want to try to go it alone, but there's a lot that you have to figure out in terms of how to build a bit. I mean, just like anything, you start any business from scratch. These are all kind of things that you need to be thinking about of how to provide that for your business and for your clients. Right. So technology, I'll show you a slide here in a second of the different offerings of technology in the industry. So this is about all the things you can choose to how to manage clients' money, use a CRM, investment management, account aggregation, client portals. Like there's a number of things on there. So it's going to be pretty hard for an individual to start this on their own and say, hey, these are all the best case scenarios in terms of what the technology is that I want to use, right? So Northwestern provides all of that. They say, hey, we know, we've kind of vetted a lot of it. We have we're a Fortune 90 company. We can do a lot of research and development around the different technology that we can use, right? So they kind of went out and said, hey, we're going to pick the best stuff. Maybe we're going to build some of that stuff in-house, et cetera, which we're doing more and more of right now as our technology arm kind of advances and our digital presence increases. Marketing, right? How do I find clients? How do I continue to build my brand? It's hard for an individual to put an ad on TV during the Rose Bowl, right? That's a pretty expensive bet for somebody to make, whereas a Fortune 90 company can say, hey, we can go put an ad in front of the Rose Bowl or in front of college football or NFL or whatever, right? There's only football examples, but there are others that we're advertising in front of as well. So the point is, hey, you have a big marketing, you have a big name again behind you, in addition to the fact that, hey, you're able to go out and acquire clients. Staffing, right? So as your business gets bigger and more complex, people have to hire, right? And so there's an opportunity within our firm where we, some people start out as advisors and they find like, hey, that's not quite our path. We'd love to go work on a team, or somebody might be a little bit more like, yeah, I love the operations side of things. I love the, investment management specifically. And so we have a lot of people that get paired up with advisors teams and go work with them. And obviously Paige is part of that, where she's identifying a lot of people in the community, whether it's in college or otherwise, that might not be a great fit to kind of start their own financial planning firm, but they'd love to go work and help clients in different capacity. And so again, having that around you, if you go do that independently, it's going to be really difficult to kind of facilitate and hire people. Trust me, we have a lot of resources and it's still really hard to hire people. So to do that on your own, is even more almost impossible at that point. And then succession planning, we kind of talked about that. Like, what's the next generation look like? How do I pass my business on? How do I sell that in a way that's still valuable? And if I'm independent, I might not, have a way to kind of pass that on to the next generation as easily as you do with a firm like ours, right? And so there's kind of an evolution of this over time in terms of what this business looks like. And so it's like any other business, right? You've probably seen, I'm sure somebody's seen this graph in a business class previously, but it's really the same way that our business works. There's a lot of, acquiring of clients early on, and then it's about growing and how do I really get into the markets I want to be in, and how do I really define what my brand looks like, and then how do I mature, and now my staff is getting bigger and I'm starting to think about the next generation. And, again, this was kind of what happened previously, was that you see a lot of decline because the person would retire and it basically just like clients would kind of fall off or, die, right, as they're getting older. And that became just kind of not a valuable or helpful business at some point. So as you're developing that generation two, you would start to be seeing this, kind of, hey, we can continue to grow with that next generation rather than stagnate or decline. And so this is where no matter what you choose, right, if you choose to be an advisor, and most of the people at our firm remain advisors for their entire career, right? So it's a little bit different in that I think people ask me all the time, like, well, how do I keep moving up through the company? It's like, well, you just keep growing your business, right? There's no real moving up. If you're a CEO of a business, there's no extra level that you can kind of go to. And that's the way I look at our business, is that you become a founder of a financial firm. There's no higher you can go in that business. You can transition to go into leadership, which is not really a promotion. That's just a different passion, which we'll talk about in a second. But either way, you're always going to be in leadership. Like I said, you're first leading yourself. Like, as you're starting your business, you got to be accountable. We always joke you're the CEO and you're also the sales team at the same time, right? You have to set the big vision, but you as the advisor have to go out and execute and build clients and create that strategy at the same time as you're thinking about 2 to 5 years down the road. And then you start in that growth phase of, I'm hiring people. Now I have to start learning how to lead others, right? I need to start learning how to set goals and keep people accountable and listen, right? And effectively listen and understand how to grow your team, because that's going to be such an important part of you being able to go into that mature phase and actually have a real business. You can't do it alone, right? And so you have to really become a great leader of people if you choose to do this for a long period of time. And the second you get to that generation two, you're going to have leaders that are leading within your firm as well. And that's kind of where I'm at in my career right now, is that I moved from being an individual contributor, right, and an advisor to working on a team, and now I'm leading a group of individuals. And every day I'm learning from them probably more than they learn from me in a lot of cases, and that just keeps helping me become a better and better leader. And so I think the way that I've learned and still continuing to improve on that is just asking really good questions, right, and being open to feedback. The worst leaders that I've had are the ones that aren't open to any kind of feedback, right? And I think we just asked a question to our team recently that Paige still hasn't given me an answer on, but was that, hey, is there something that I'm doing personally or not doing that I should be that would help you work with me even better, right? And I think the hard thing is, does the team feel comfortable giving you that feedback, right? I think that does matter. That if they don't feel comfortable, if they can't come to you with concerns and questions and things, if your team's silent, that means you're probably not a good leader. If you're not hearing much, I know that always sounds like a good thing, like, oh, I'm not hearing anything, so that's a good thing. Like, no, that's probably not. That just means that they're probably not talking to you, because there's always things that are going on, whether it's good things or maybe not so good things. I'd rather hear feedback than not. And so I think that's part of my judge as a leader, is if I feel like there's a really open communication line between our teams, no matter what, I feel like we're in a pretty good spot, but always can keep improving. And so with that, again, you have to become now a leader of leaders, where how do I teach someone else how to lead? And that becomes an even different layer of leadership, rather than just being able to lead a team. It's saying, okay, we have other people that are coaching and leading. Now, how do I transfer those skills It's kind of like Wayne Gretzky was a terrible coach, right? He could do very, very well. He was the best hockey player of all time, but when he transitioned to coaching, he wasn't very good. He couldn't translate those skills down to other people because maybe it was just natural talent, et cetera. So, maybe I wasn't very good at what I did previously as an individual contributor, but I could pass down the skills that would make somebody good, even more so. And so I found that passion and leadership. And I think, it's hard because there's a lot of companies that force you to go into management to kind of make more money or advance within the career, et cetera. Ours isn't like that. You can choose to go into it if you have a passion around it. I liked seeing other people succeed. I liked, coaching and helping and teaching and kind of having a little bit bigger eye on things and working with a bigger organization. But you had to learn some very different skills that I really wasn't naturally, just given. I don't know if a lot of people are necessarily. It's learned over, like I said, making mistakes and getting feedback and being open to, kind of changing as much as you can throughout that time. So again, I think a good leader is, somebody that does have a strong vision and definitely can, lead from the front, but also is willing to, within that framework, learn and continue to better themselves at the same time, right? Practice like a pro. If I wasn't emulating that myself, that wouldn't be very fair to ask everybody else in my firm to continue to improve and get better, right? So, from a development standpoint in our market here in Utah, our first year advisors on average are about 119,000 of income in their first year out here in Utah. So we've been a little bit higher than company average, which has been fun to see. So this is over the last 3 years, we averaged out first year income advisors, top quartiles in that yellow there. And so that's a good gauge, right? It's not the only gauge of if the company is being effective, but we feel like in Utah, if you're really committed to financial planning, if you really want to build a business, we can help you do that at a pretty high level out here in our state. And so I think it's a testament to Paige and everyone that she's working with on their team, and it's a testament to our other leaders that are in the different offices. We have offices across the state, and so this is obviously not just us here in Salt Lake. It's a collective effort, but we feel like we're in a good spot where you could start on that journey, and it could be something really exciting and have a lot of equity and really build a big business, but you can start off really, really quickly as well, which we've been excited to see over the last few years, how that's kind of evolved. From a leadership standpoint, the fun thing too is you can kind of choose. Most of our advisors are player coaches, right? So they're working with clients part of the time, and they're leading a team part of the time as well. So, in my role, I'm doing mostly people leadership, right? I'm really not meeting with clients very regularly. It might be a one-off thing that I'm doing with clients, but most of our leaders are spending 30, 40, 70% of their time with clients, and the other part of their time are leading an office or coaching and developing and training. So you can kind of figure out what that mix is. Do I want to help clients and be a leader, but I want to figure out exactly how much time I want to spend in both. And you can kind of stop or start anywhere. Again, there's not really, it looks like a ladder on here, but there's really not a ladder to climb necessarily in our world. It's kind of what responsibility you want to take, and have you obviously represented those things that we talked about earlier at a high level. So obviously talked about a lot in terms of our career, but hopefully shared a few things on leadership and the things that I've learned in that space. But again, like I said, I leave you with this. If you're going to set a vision, if you're going to set core values, if you're going to set these things that are important to the organization, you have to live by those. It's not like a parent saying, do as I say, not as I do, right? When you're that integrated into an organization, you have to be the one leading from the front, whatever it is that you believe to be true and to be your values. And so I think there's even more responsibility on the leader to do that than anybody that's new coming into the organization. And so think about that. I think just in your own lives, I mean, that's one of the questions I always ask people in interviews are what are the values that you have and hold for yourself that feel like you're going to make yourself successful, and potentially that's something you can translate, whether it's to your kids or to the people that you work with. But I think having a little bit more of a center point that you can focus your time and energy around, I think is something you can always come back to and make sure that your kind of alignment is always kind of your North Star, right? You always want to see where that is, kind of how you're aligned. I think those values for us have really helped us do that. We've had difficult conversations just recently about some of that and the respect everyone. And it's a pretty friendly group that we're around, but sometimes boundaries get crossed a little bit. And so I think if we can come back to the fact like, hey, one of our core tenets or our core four is that we respect everyone. And I think if everyone kind of continues to look through that lens, it helped people stay a little bit more aligned rather than everybody kind of doing their own thing, if you will. So that's really all I had. I think I'm pretty much at time for the most part. So any questions that have come out of that or anything that you'd like to pick my brain about? Or maybe Paige's. She might be a better insight into to the office, but.
So for licensing, do new hires need to have a Series 7, Series 6? They get the SIE, is that enough to get hired? Do you help support them as they get the licensing?
Good question. Yeah. So you don't need to have a license to be in our process whatsoever. So we don't, we're not out there searching for people that already have licenses. It doesn't hurt if you already do, but we help you and facilitate the insurance licensing and all of the investment licensing. So life and health exam helps us on the insurance side, and then the SIE 663 is what we're looking for on the investment side. But most people don't have those already coming in, and we help facilitate the studying and the test and everything like that.
So if they pass the SIE, that would probably be a nice feather in their cap.
Totally. Yeah, we'd love to see people with some licensing already done. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
How are your services outstand compared to other financial advisors?
In what regard? Like, in what regard? Like how? What do you mean?
Like financial advisors, how do you stand out?
Oh, stand out. Yeah. I think the kind of what I mentioned before is that we're truly full service, right? So a client is they can be a one-stop shop within our firm, whereas most other advisors are essentially, if you hear a financial advisor, they tend to be only investment management. So they're not thinking about what are the risks that could challenge your retirement plan, what are what if you die too soon and become sick or hurts, right? Most of them aren't actually providing a true financial roadmap or financial plan. Most of them are focused on just the insurance management or just the investment management. I think that's why our average client relationship is 40 years long, is because we generally can continue to grow and evolve with our clients. I think that's where we tend to stand out, is that they can go to one advisor that creates a cohesive strategy rather than have to have multiple people in on that same plan.
So do you provide like personal advice to each client?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we sit down, there's a multi-step process, I guess. We're really fact-finding and understanding kind of what the client's goals are. And obviously every situation is very, very different. And we were talking about this a lot yesterday, is that most of the decisions that are made in this space by a client are not logical. They're very emotional, right? And so that's what a lot of our advisors tend to focus on, is can I figure out what makes you tick? What's your relationship to money? What have you learned about it? Right? And then we can figure out what solutions. And because we have such a broad array of solutions, I don't have to be focused on like, well, if I have one thing, one product that I do, guess what? You're going to have to try to fit into that mold, right? Everybody's a nail and I'm a hammer. Whereas we can go in very client focused and say, hey, let's figure out what's important to you, and then design that solution set very customized to and personalized to them. Yeah.
Okay. Is your fee structure transparent?
Yeah. Yeah, very. I mean, everybody, I'm presenting something to a client tomorrow. Again, I don't meet with clients a lot, but tomorrow I am, and everything says very clearly exactly what they'll be charged and everything in terms of the products that we'd be implementing with them. Yeah, those are good questions. What else? Yeah.
Is there anything that you do kind of day to day to excel who you are as a leader, or do you like steps you take personally?
Hide in my office and try not to make mistakes as much as possible. No, I think there's so many different podcasts, and like I said, my team helps so much with that, because like, you get stuck, you're busy, and you're meeting, you're doing all sorts of stuff, and sometimes just asking for feedback tends to be a really powerful thing. I got some very pointed feedback from my team last week that was like, okay, I can easily change that, and that if it would make it easier to work with me. And so I think that's, we meet every single week, and we're very transparent as what's going on and what's going well and not well. And, again, if I can give feedback to them, it would only seem fair that they can give feedback to me at the same point. And it doesn't mean I still, again, don't lead and still have maybe final decision on some things, but at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of transparent communication that goes on, and then listening to podcasts and talking. I think a fun part about our company is that there's a lot of interaction. So we talk with people. I have a study group we have people in LA, we have people in Newport, we have people in Chicago, Florida. So I have a national study group that I talk to that are all other leaders within the organization. We meet once a month and just kind of talk about all this stuff, what's going well, what's not. So I think finding a room also that like helps drive you and make you better, and people around you that are kind of in the same space has been really helpful for me. Yeah.
In your experience, what has helped you kind of inspire or I guess help teach others to lead and be successful?
I think one of the biggest things is just believing in what you do at a core element, right? So really, I mean, that's where I've grown my passion for financial planning, is just the experiences that I've had with clients and like driving a lot of my decisions around that, right? So what are the things that are best for the client? And then you kind of can translate that up to leadership if you're leading a team, et cetera, or kind of internally rather than a client. It's like, if you're always thinking about what's in the best interest of your client, you should always be thinking what's in the best interest of your team, right? I'm only as good as if it was just me running around here, like I'd be, she knows, it'd be a total mess, right? And so like the more that I can do to make their lives, easy, again, there's a leadership component of, again, I have to be a strong leader and still set, a very strong vision and be, strong when I need to be, but also understand that like, I also need to treat them very, very well. And again, I need to make sure that their experience is, and so I think that thought process of, do what's in the best interest of your client, you can translate all the way up to leadership as well. I think is kind of the mindset that I try to help people understand a little bit too. Again, when you become a leader, you become more of a servant in a way than you do anything else, and you can do it the right way. Again, it's a mix, right? You gotta lead, but you also have to serve at the same time. And so I think that mindset is what I try to instill in any new leader that I'm coaching as much as possible.
Yeah. So what do you specialize at, like in advising?
Me specifically, or the company in general?
At the company itself.
The fun part about that is what we specialize in is really dependent on the advisor, right? So we have an advisor that just came out and talked to us from Boston who is very hyper focused on anybody in the financial world. So all of his clients are either venture capital, private equity, investment banking, people in that space. So he's decided to focus in on that group, and they tend to be multimillionaires by the age of 30. So their type of planning is going to be very different than somebody that's 65 and whatever it is, right? So he specializes in that. We have advisors that specialize in working just with businesses. So one of our advisors up in Farmington has worked only with businesses for the last 25 years. So he focuses in on 401ks and group benefits and employee and ownership compensation. And so that's his kind of niche that he focuses on. And then we have other advisors that focus just on retirement planning, and we have others that focus in on working with banks, right? Banks and corporations do a lot of work with our firm as well in very specific ways. Another one focuses in on they work with high net worth individuals, like let's say like a rancher who a lot of net worth, but not a lot of maybe as much cash flow as you might imagine. And how do I pass that down to the next generation? Not all of my kids are going to want to run this ranch. Maybe it's only one of them. So how do I set up an estate plan that focuses on transferring that value? So it's hard to answer because there's so many different ways that our advisors are kind of helping clients. And it's as you're kind of in that business building phase, you start to figure out like, where do I get some excitement out of working with clients, and you start to narrow your gaze a little bit as you go through that. Am I explaining that okay?
So do you guys do you like act on the best of your client?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're fiduciaries. We're again, that's clients are fairly responsive in terms of if you're doing the right thing by them, they're going to stay with you. And I think that's a testament to I think we showed before 97% client retention. Our average client relationship's 40 years. Like if we weren't doing the right thing by them, they probably wouldn't be with us very long, right? I mean, you see that just in the marketplace right now. And if Chick-fil-A says something wrong, people are all of a sudden, you got half the people not wanting to go there, right? I think the consumer is very, very reactive, and I think knowing that our retention is as high as it is, I think we've been pretty good at doing what's in the best interest of clients. Yeah. Questions? Yeah.
So say a student, new hire comes in the door. What can they expect job-wise? Are they going to be immediately going out after client acquisition, or are they going to be starting out on a team as maybe a service member, so they kind of get their head wrapped around all the products?
Yeah.
Maybe build up to where they maybe take over that team support in the future. What type of job duties are they going to have? And also their pay is going to be salary, commission, or mix.
Yeah, good question. So new hire, in the advising space, internship, our training tends to be ranked top of the industry. So you're gonna get a lot of industry training, and a lot of that comes from current advisors, right? So you're not gonna get a corporate trainer that says, hey, here's how life insurance works, or here's how these investments work. It's gonna be somebody that's actually out in the field meeting with clients saying, all right, here's how this operates in real life, right? This is how I'm working with this. With these clients on these things. So there's going to be a lot of training that's involved. That's kind of ongoing for a lot of years. And again, I'm still doing a lot of training now, but there's going to be a lot of that heavy lifting. And then, our new advisors are going and seeing clients right away, right? So what we found is that most of the firms now at this point are either you're going to work at a bank for the most part, and we've talked to actually a lot of people at a certain bank, and they've been there for 8 years, and they said they're going to be given an opportunity to become an advisor, meet on a client-facing, client-building standpoint. It just still hasn't happened, right? So they're kind of still in that operation space. And then, certain other investment firms recently have said all they're going to do is add people to a team, right? And so the thing that we've found with that is that the equity portion of it and the ownership portion of it doesn't really transfer. If I'm making money as the owner of that firm, I don't transfer that as much as I might think I would, to a team member standpoint, unless I have a business partner in that. And so our philosophy is that, hey, if you want to go found a firm from scratch, that we're the firm to come do that with, right? If you want to be the owner of that firm and found that firm, you're going to go out and meet with clients right away. Now, you're going to always, not always, but you're going to have the option or the ability to go meet with clients with another advisor, right? So we have an advisor in our office who's working on our leadership team named Coleman, and he was a top 10 intern in the nation when he was doing his internship. He did way better than I did. And he's now still a top 10% advisor within the firm as he's been growing his business. And so you need to take somebody like him out on these meetings with you. So you're seeing clients, you're building your clientele, and you have a ton of support from that team member or from that advisor as you're going out and meeting with those clients. So you won't be in the back office. You're not going to be getting me coffee or Page coffee. You're actually going out there and you're going to experience what it feels like to go sit in front of a client. And any client that you bring on is going to be your client moving into the future. And that means that most of your compensation is going to come from you building that clientele, right? So as you go out, as you bring clients onto your business, et cetera, as you add products to the plan, that's where you get compensated. So, there are bonuses, there are other, things that happen along the same lines, but we're not paying a salary necessarily. Plus, it's going to be, if you're going to go found a firm, there's ways we can kind of help you do that from a marketing and cash flow standpoint, but for the most part, hey, you're going out there and driving that business from the ground up. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so they kind of have a most information, but it's some help starting off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, coming out of college, just some things we're going to help. Most of our advisors are coming out from a different career. There's ways that we can help them and can kind of.
They come in, go with clients, but.
Well, not even with clients, just from like a cash flow standpoint, we can kind of help mitigate some of that for the first little bit, kind of as they're getting started. And then coming out of college, there's a few things that we do to kind of help.
So still have a little small base to make ends meet while going there.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a bonus structure than it is a award. Might be a draw. There might be some things that we can do on that front too. It just kind of depends. But the college one is more of a bonus structure as you're kind of coming out. You're doing the right things, creating the right habits. We can bonus that as you're kind of getting going before clients start to flow.
The transition to commission based.
Yeah, and long term in our business, the majority of it's going to be recurring revenue, but those first couple of years are going to feel a bit more like maybe got to acquire clients to create income. But by about that third to fourth year, you should be feeling a pretty heavy kind of creating your own base of, whether it's fees on the investment side or, any of the insurance products paid forever as well. So kind of a combination of all those things. Yeah, did you push?
So what are some of the good investment options for the common middle class people?
We always get asked that question. We got that asked a lot yesterday, and it's really hard to answer without knowing exactly what that client situation is, right? And so I think, obviously taking advantage of your retirement plan at work is going to be, paramount for sure, especially if you're getting a match. You don't want to be leaving free money on the table. And then it depends on goals, right? Is it something that they want to spend money on in the next, if I want to buy a house in a year or two, you should put that money in the bank, right? You don't want to lose that down payment. If it's something that's a little bit farther out, maybe it's a mutual fund portfolio. If you want to save more for retirement, maybe it's a Roth IRA, right? And things like that. So like I said, and kind of what we talked about, like every one of these plans is so customized that, it's hard to give a blanket statement as to like, what's the best thing to invest in, generically, I guess. These are great questions. Anything else?
How did you come to the position that you are in the firm, and why is it unusual for someone like you to stay as long as you did?
Why is it usual or unusual?
Unusual.
Well, it's more usual in our firm, and I think there's three things why people stay as long as they do with our firm. And so I'll answer your first question first. I think it comes down to a few things, right? It comes down to most of the people that advance wherever they are, they have a certain level of grit, right? I think that's I don't know if anybody's read Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, before. Really good book. It's kind of highlights the fact that you can be really intelligent, really personable, even hardworking, but grit is kind of like, can you do a little bit extra, right? And so I was willing to, stay later and go the extra mile and be a little bit more, like I said, programmed to kind of over deliver. And I think those things matter. And then again, you execute on the values of like, it clearly seems like people, do you want to follow that person if you are in a leadership role, and it clearly you can develop people and you see success and it just kind of builds upon itself. And so I think it's just it's consistency over a period of time. And again, I started this pretty young, and I just learned how to work right at a very, very young age in college where I was 19. And it kind of been instilled in me from a young age from parents, but also athletics and other things. And I think I just translated that to work, if you will. And again, it's usually when hard work beats talent, when talent doesn't work hard, right? And I think that's probably where I lean, is maybe less on the talent side. I'm more just like, hey, I'm willing to work a little bit harder than everybody else. And so I think that was the kind of the X factor in that. And then, from a staying long time standpoint, I think there's three things. It's control, right? So I have, ultimate control. I mean, I even friends nowadays are like, well, I can't really answer my phone at work. I can't do this. I can't nobody's asking me where I'm at on a day-to-day basis. Maybe Paige, if you need something from me, but for the most part, like, hey, I get to run my own schedule. I get to be here. I get to do things like this. I get to, travel when I want to, there's no PTO. It's like, it's my own business at the end of the day. So, that control of things. And then, from an environment standpoint, like, the company's strong, but our industry is strong in that, my managing partner started in 2002. I started in 2009. And then obviously the last 3 years, we've had some pretty big market turmoil. That hasn't changed anything of what we do. It's actually made things better in a lot of ways. So the 2002, 2009, and in the last 3 years, we've had huge spikes in productivity and the way that we're working with clients and new client acquisition. And so there's a lot of control in the fact that, like, it doesn't matter what's going on outside of the world. I talked to a lot of people in 2020 that got laid off. Right? They're like, well, I need a base salary. I need something consistent. I need something that is stable. I'm like, you just got laid off. That wasn't, you had a base salary, you just got laid off, right? So I think people love that control of like, hey, I'm not answering to anybody. I'm building my own thing, and nothing outside can kind of knock me off course. I think the other thing within that is the flexibility, right? So, if I need to do anything with my wife or my fur babies or anything along those lines, hopefully future babies as well, but I'm not missing anything, right? So the flexibility, I think our world is kind of the opposite of most corporate careers, where early on, they're not asking much of you, you kind of can do your thing and whatever, but the higher you go in a corporation, the more they kind of own you. They pay you more, but there's a lot of less flexibility in that world. Talked to an executive just last year that was home one day in December because he was flying around the country doing other things, and he made $1 million a year, but he was home on Christmas, and that was the only time he was home. And so, our world, because of how stable, and the majority of the people you work with long-term in our business are clients, not new client acquisition, that tends to create a lot of flexibility in that space. And the longer you're in it, doesn't mean you work not as hard, it just means you're much more efficient with your time. And then the final thing is career clarity. Again, the fact that I can have the opportunity and work with the people that I do, and have the income upside that I do, and all that stuff, and I don't have to change firms to do that, is really, really freeing for me. Again, being here 14 years, I feel like every day I'm still continuing to be challenged, not bored, and so a ton of upside is really awesome, at least from my perspective. And any of our new advisors, I can show you somebody 6 months into business, a year in, 10 years in, 30 years in, and you can show them exactly how we can get there. It's a pretty prescriptive system that we adhere to. And so I think that's relieving for a lot of people because otherwise you're changing departments or companies and trying to work your way up at different firms. And I think that becomes frustrating, especially as you start to get into different spaces. Doesn't mean our business is right for everybody, but those are the things I think if you really, love that about what we do, you're going to be here for forever. So, cool. Any final thoughts? All right, easy enough. Well, I appreciate the questions, appreciate the attentiveness, et cetera. And I think you'll have all my info. So if you guys have any other follow-up questions, et cetera. I think we have one last thing. If you are interested, keep that slide up just real quick again. Sure. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, we do have internship opportunities right now. And again, like I said, you're doing what advisors are doing on a day-to-day basis. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So if you have any interest in the internship program or talking a little bit more about what it is that we do, Paige would love to talk to you a little bit more in depth about that and help you, again, learn a little bit more about what the internship program has to offer. So scan that QR code and we'll have your info to reach out. But appreciate the time, appreciate everybody, again, having us today, and hopefully we'll see you again. Thanks so much.